Hello, hello everybody. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in to today's program. My name is Ben Epstein and I am super thrilled to announce our latest new segment. We're going to call it the Epstein Files. Now I know what you're thinking. These aren't going to be the Epstein Files that are already famous. For one thing, we actually will be showing the Epstein Files. They aren't going to just disappear into thin air. They will, though, have to be closed and reopened every week. And how we're going to do this, based off of the survey that we sent out to you, the audience, we're going to break down three stories that I think are very important to understand throughout the coming week. And it's going to cover stories relating to geopolitics, economics, culture, international affairs, anything that I think is worth sharing to you guys, because you are the audience that we really want to have discuss the relevance and also your guys' thoughts in the comment section. So after, as I'm talking about these stories, please be sure to add your own thoughts and comments, and I'll be sure to look over them, and any comment or suggestion that we think is incredibly useful, we could even put in the next video. So your guys' feedback is not only wanted, it's incredibly encouraged, and that's why we've set up this format like this. So don't hesitate, and without further ado, guys, let's open the Epstein Files. Okay, so our first story today is going to be coming in the midst of the ongoing trade war between the United States and China. And for a while, we were really thinking that, the trade war has sort of hit a lull. They even had this agreement in Madrid where it was, where it was thought of that they would actually come to some reconciliation. But it seems like the former Nobel Prize winner can't really help himself. So let me share this article with you guys as soon as I figure out how this works. Okay, so here is a copy of from Ground News. It was talking about how Trump has initially threatened over 100% tariff rate hike following China's recent announcement on export controls for their rare earth minerals. It was announced, on Sunday that the United States would plan on levying an additional 100% tariffs on China if they did not release these export controls that would limit the rare earths shipping to the United States. Now, why are these rare earth minerals so important, not just for the United States economy, but also for the world, right? Well, I think what's really important to understand is that, for one thing, these rare earth minerals, they are in so many common products that I not only use in my day-to-day, but also for you guys and anyone in modern technology and also the military. We see that these rare minerals are used everywhere. So here is this. Here I'm going to be sharing you guys a chart of the production volume of these rare earth minerals and how it has been segmented between the United States, or with China and others. And one thing we'll find pretty startling is that throughout the entire process of mining, separating, refining, all of these rare earth minerals that we find crucially important, China has not just a global share or a global lead, but an outright monopoly and dominance throughout the entire supply chain process. From beginning to end, China has been improving and refining its mining and its extraction techniques, and we can see now that the entire world is dependent on the China's rare earth minerals, not just the the minerals themselves, but the technology. So how does this play into, when I talk about products that are very important to rare earth minerals, what do I mean specifically? So for one thing, we could see here the recent pie chart here. These rare earth minerals are going into two incredibly important things in particular that I want to highlight: electronics and military equipment. So for a lot of these rare earth minerals, they're not necessarily rare, but the idea is that depending on what the mineral is, it goes into the products, into the outputs essentially. So things like these lithium ion batteries, things like magnets, which are incredibly important across all spheres of, all industries and the like, but also how these rare earth minerals are used in ammunition, precision ammunition technology, radar technology, industrial motors. Like the F-35 jet cannot perform without a bunch of these rare earth minerals that China has has set these export restrictions on. So you can see that between electronics and the military, why the United States would be as upset as it is. So now that we've established that these rare earth minerals are in like every modern day product, right? A lot of the stuff that we're seeing in and out, why would the United States threaten 100% tariff hikes, or even as so far as the Treasury Secretary has often touted or even tried to threaten a 500% tariff hike? In a recent meeting with other United States senators, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also tried to say that India is not going to be buying Russian oil, and if the United States did not do this, or if China or India for whatever reason did not follow through on not buying Russia's oil imports, that they were going to threaten 500% tariffs, which is bonkers. Like, I can't really think of you could call it the nuclear bomb really on not just the United States economy, but also the world economy if they actually decided to press those codes in. So China has already retaliated with 1,000% tariffs if they actually do this, which I find is bonkers. Like 1,000% tariffs is completely unfathomable, especially what we've been seeing, in the last 5 or 10 years. So with all of this in mind, why is China setting up these export restrictions? What's really prompting them to put these export restrictions in now, and has led to a lot of this, backlash from the United States? So when I was talking to you before about how China's dominance in rare earth minerals allows it to basically be in the supply chains of every major economy that is trying to, buy or export these products or produce them and manufacture these products themselves with the rare earth minerals they get from China to their consumers, right? But what about the military aspects? I mean, that should already send alarm bells to people like myself and everyone here, because the United States really, really needs this to actually show any military, show any military power whatsoever. The fact that they can't even build any jets, any munition systems or radars really with export restrictions, for example, really just goes to show how important these are to not just the United States economy, but also its projection using its military around the world, right? But let's take this into an even broader context. Here's a map that I found particularly interesting that shows the most recent protests between the what they've been calling the Gen Z protests that we've been noticing around the world. So if we could kind of really zoom in here, we could see a number of important countries, especially sort of in this Asian region, right? We had Bangladesh, which not only had these most recent protests, but their leader was ousted in a coup, and she has gone into hiding ever since. Nepal, their president or their prime minister was recently ousted following these protests. Their government building was burned. And a lot of these protests are citing issues with basically corruption and free speech and the like. And we talk about Bangladesh and Nepal. And let me zoom in here. We also had these protests that had erupted in the Philippines, as well as Indonesia. And I'm not even including the ongoing war in Myanmar, which is right here on this, right where my cursor is. This ongoing civil war in Myanmar that's ongoing is about right here. But also the conflict between Cambodia and Thailand that lasted a couple of days and has actually, fortunately, been going through the peace transition. But it really just goes to show a lot of the countries that are bordering China are facing crises, a lot of these destabilization efforts, which plays into the United States' hands because they've used this similar strategy to destabilize the neighbors of countries that they want to essentially gain more influence or control over. And China has been noticing this too. That's why these export restrictions have been prompted now, and that's why these export restrictions are that important, really as consequential as it is, because the United States needing these rare earth materials to make these weapons to bomb China or any of their adversaries creates an insane irony that the United States military needs China to oust China, or at the very least make China more subservient to what the United States wants, which makes this export controls and this retaliation a massive bombshell. Now, recognizing the United States is stuck between a rock and a hard place is going to make any of their covert operations worse, but also will really fall back onto the United States economy and by nature the consumer because of it, because we are going to be facing these export restrictions and these extra taxes get passed on to the consumer. Now, when I say the United States is a lot more reliant on China than vice versa, I think that's sort of a controversial statement. So I kind of want to explain a little bit more why I say this. So here is an article from the Office of Economic Complexity, which is a great resource, by the way. I highly recommend anyone that wants to use this resource definitely do so. I get a lot of my data here, and and they do a lot of very interesting research. Right here, they're breaking down the United States trade over June of 2025. And you can see that while imports from China fell nearly $19 billion, their exports themselves have actually increased more than $5.5 billion, because what they're doing, as you guys can see, is they are reshoring, or they're sort of friendshoring, if you can call it that, a bunch of their critical supply chains to countries like Vietnam, Taiwan, and Mexico that have that are better situated with the United States, vice versa China. And when we scroll down here, we can see that even though when we see how exports have changed, it's really it's really exacerbated as the United States recognizes that they're trying to friendshore more, but they are way too little too late to really to brace for the economic calamity that could follow this. So here again is sort of a reflection of the ongoing trade war between the United States and China. And we can see that here, for China's sake, their exports have actually been increased. Most recently, they came out and said their exports increased 6.6%. But their exports from China to the United States on the most popular, most commonly exchanged items are the ones that are really hitting the mark, or really hitting the difference here. Computers have, from China to the United States, the exports have dropped $3.7 billion in May 2024 to 2025 alone. Telephones too have dropped more than $2 billion that have been exported, while batteries, which is something that China has taken the lead on, especially with lithium ion and EV batteries, that's dropped also 27% too. So here, scrolling down, even as we see the exports have dropped from China to the United States is trying to make this up with friendshoring to countries like India, for example, or Thailand. But China has already braced itself and pivoted its economy so it can not rely so much on the United States and export much of its goods to neighboring countries or those with ongoing relationships. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that the exports between or from China to the United States has dropped considerably, and they have for a while now. And this will continue to be a thing because the United States has proven that it's not a reliable trading partner. But for China's sake, that they've been able to successfully repivot its economy because they know that they're pivoting away from the United States to its neighbors. So they are much more independent of its relationship to the United States than the United States relying on goods from China. So the question I want to ask you guys is do you guys think that Trump will go through with 100% tariff rate hike or even 1,000% tariff rate hike? Do you think he will follow through with this? Please give your thoughts in the comments section because I'm pretty curious about your guys' thoughts. I think I've outlined pretty clearly that I don't think Trump will do this for a couple reasons. I think for one thing, he's tried this before, right? Like he's threatened 500% tariffs. This tariff war with China, where tariffs were as high as over 110, 135%, and it quickly went back down. The United States is in a much weaker position to actually not just threaten these tariffs, but actually go through with it, right? For one thing, there's a massive government shutdown. So I don't even know how you're going to hire the people or tell the people to go in there and embrace, to put forth these tariffs, right? We're closed. We'll enforce these tariffs once we actually get back to you. But not just that, but also when you notice how the stock market reacts to a lot of these tariff announcements, you notice it falls like a stone because the business community and the investment community are incredibly aware that if they actually were to raise these tariffs considerably to 100% or more, it's going to completely destroy any business from the United States to China, which is that much of a problem because they're that much reliant on China. But simultaneously, it also shows that this threat will never go enforced. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section about Trump's recent threats, and let me know if you guys think he'll actually follow through on that, why or why not, and I'll be sure to look through it in the comments section. Okay. And before we transition to our next story, I want to encourage you guys to please share this video, to like and subscribe, and to, like always, post your thoughts and your questions in the comments section. Your voice and your audience is what is most important to us here. So me trying to reach you guys is all I'm hoping to achieve. And if you guys learn something, that's great. And I hope to learn from you guys too, because your thoughts and opinions matter just as much. Okay, so let's move on to our next story here. Okay, so over the last 2 weeks, it was announced that Brazil's foreign direct investment had actually reached a near record high when compared to its GDP ratio. So to lay this out more, there was more than $1.14 trillion of foreign direct investment into the Brazilian economy by the end of 2024. And that is that's an insane statistic in of itself if we don't even just consider how this is nearly half of its GDP. Like, foreign investors and people are so high on Brazil right now. They've given them nearly as much as half of what the Brazilian economy can produce. That is remarkable, and it goes to show how Brazil has successfully been able to pivot its economy, in this multipolar era that we are now. So, before we kind of go into who were the biggest investors, why, in what sectors in particular, I want to highlight something that was very important in this story. It was many of these investors were actually the big thing that was driving them was the concept of productive capital. So officials underlined that the bulk of these inflows are of a productive nature, boosting installed capacity, supporting infrastructure expansion, and contributing to long-term productivity growth. And that's incredibly important because it shows how not just how investments are going to start to be treated in a much better way now in this era of BRICS becoming the main economic focal point around the world. So what exactly is productive capital? So, like they were already sort of discussing, productive capital is trying to do two things. For one thing, it's trying to expand the overall capacity of the project itself. So what do I mean by this? Like, what's a good example? Well, suppose that you are in a widget factory, and right now, based off your production schedule, you can make 100 widgets. You can make 100 widgets a day. So suppose that some investor comes and say, I have this great new technology you can put in your machine, and it's going to change you being able to produce from 100 a day to 200 a day, or from 200 to 400. And something like that is a worthwhile investment because it's expanding that capacity. And the other important thing is it proves to be a source of long-term productivity growth. Long-term productivity growth, and that is something that should be way more relevant. It should have been way more relevant for the last 30 years. But now that it's actually getting its due, its recognition, it's more than deserved. When we're talking about something that is long-term productive, if I'm the one making these widgets, if I can make 10 widgets a day, and someone comes through with, adding a tool for myself that can make the widgets faster, or a program that shows how I can make it more efficiently, and in effect, I can make 150 widgets a day instead of 100 widgets a day, and prove it that I can do that for a long period of time. That's just an example of productivity growth. But what do you guys think are some other examples of productive capital and sort of that investment into facilities that are going to try to boost the overall capacity of that project, but also improve the long-term productivity growth of those that are using that plant, using that capital? So why I think they are really talking about this in particular is the one needed agreement, or one agreement that came through recently, is Brazil and China have agreed to open an EV manufacturing plant, and it's designed to hold. Right now, it's designed to only have 150,000 vehicles made a year. But the point is that China and Brazil coming to this agreement for them to invest in these EV manufacturing plants in Brazil will be a source of this long-term productivity growth. And there's a number of different reasons for that. For one thing, China is the leader bar none in both electric vehicles, but also the lithium-ion batteries and a lot of the green technology that has been used in not just electric vehicles, but solar panels and related renewable technology. So for Brazil, they managed to get the best maker of electric vehicles, lithium-ion batteries, which is one of the most important things of an electric vehicle. And now they are significantly positioned to become the leader of EV manufacturing in Latin America. That's one of the biggest reasons that they're doing this, and it's one of the most important things that President Lula da Silva has done for its economy, not just for when he leaves, but in the far distant future. EV vehicles are going to be the future, whether the United States sticks with crude oil or not. They can get along with the program or they can stay in their bubble. It's their choice. But the fact of the matter is that China has a dominant stake in electric vehicles and lithium-ion batteries, and them coming to an agreement with Brazil here is going to make it a crucial EV manufacturing plant in Latin America. And here is just a quick article that was showing that this factory that I was talking about, that was being assembled, agreed upon, it had recently opened, and President Lula da Silva here on the right was there for the inauguration. Like, it's insane to think that the president of the country would just come in there and be front and center to debut this project, unless he understood how important this project was going to be for its economic future. So, right now, the production capacity for this plant is going to be about 150,000 cars a year. And it would say that and it aims that it's going to increase, right now the plant by itself is going to have an annual production capacity of 150,000 vehicles. And the first cars that are actually going to be going on sale are going to be like right now. Like, they invested over $1 billion into this project, and they're going to make this money back immediately. So aside from electric vehicles, why are people really investing into Brazil? Well, ironically, the biggest investor in Brazil is actually the United States. So out of the 47% FDI to GDP, which is just remarkable to say in of itself, the leaders of it are the United States with 22%, followed by countries like France, the Netherlands, Uruguay, and Spain. Now, it's weird. China is not a leader in this by any stretch. So why am I really making that argument here? Well, one important thing that they are investing in out of this money, out of this massive FDI pool, is alternative financial services and systems. It's about 22% of that 47% is financial services and financial related architecture. The next is crude oil and gas extraction. The next are EV manufacturing services, and also agriculture. So now we can kind of see how Brazil wants to position itself throughout, for the next 10 or so years. The massive investment in financial services even if most of it was by the United States, I will argue it's actually going to be used to make alternative payment systems that will bypass the dollar in their any sort of bilateral trade. They're going to use the Brazilian real throughout all of this. And even though the United States is investing, over $260 billion at the end of 2024, it's not going to help the United States' relationship with Brazil, nor even improve the standing of the dollar in global trade. The next was the electric vehicle manufacturing and why that's important. We discussed it. Another one I want to talk about is agriculture. And when we talk about agriculture, we're talking about things such as bovine meat, but most importantly, soybeans. It sounds wild, but here is, again, from the Office of Economic Complexity. Here is a breakdown of the biggest exporters and importers of soybeans as of the end of 2023. Now, Brazil has basically double the amount of exports that the second biggest country, the United States in this case, has in terms of exporting soybeans. But guess who's the number one customer? China. And it's not even close. China has imported over $56 billion of soybeans, and wouldn't you know it, Brazil is the biggest exporter of soybeans. The United States has made itself, it's basically shot itself in the foot because they had soybeans and other important agriculture that the United States always tries to export to keep its prices down. But they're ruining the relationship they have with their biggest trade partner. And look who China will settle for. Brazil. It's perfect for them. They have a great relationship. So soybeans and other areas of agriculture is going to be something that Brazil will really try to position itself as sort of the agricultural leader of Latin America. But lastly, I want to touch on oil. So why is that important? So for one thing, Brazil is a major exporter of crude petroleum. And you can see here, again from the Office of Economic Complexity, that crude petroleum, along with soybeans and iron, were the three biggest exports of Brazil. And and guess who you'd wonder would be the biggest destination for areas like crude petroleum, iron, soybeans? It's China. So Brazil has made a match in heaven here because of how their economy has, been trying to position itself, and there's no stopping it. They're going to have this agreement, and they're going to have more than enough demand to meet not just for itself, but for China and its other trade partners. So I want your guys' opinion. Do you really think Brazil will be leading Latin America in these categories of, electric vehicle manufacturing, agriculture, and, oil extraction, right? Do you think what it's done has allowed it to be the leader going into years from now as an economic powerhouse of the region? I think so, but I want your guys' thoughts in the comment section. And just one more final thought. It just goes to show, reciprocity is really one of the biggest ingredients you have to make these insane, deals of anything, right? If you treat your trade partner as an equal and you see that there's a way that you could gain something on something you specialize with, you're going to come to that agreement. China had a need for soybeans. Brazil is the biggest exporter of soybeans. There really isn't much they need to do beyond that. Okay, so we are going to get myself a little bit of water. Whew, yeah, it's fun. I love talking about this stuff with you guys, and I love just kind of reading what you guys have to say because I'm really curious here. So let me see. Trump is using the menace of tariffs to make money in the stock market. See, I find that could be interesting. Um, but for me, like tariffs are not going to help the United. The tariffs will not help the United States' stock market at all. You can even see in this article after they came out, after Trump made this insane, insane rambling, he about issuing these tariff threats, the stock market went down nearly the stock market went down nearly like 3%, 3.7%. And Trump had to, and he does this every time. He walks it back. It's cool, guys. I was just mad. I'm not beefing with anyone. We just had a bad moment. Things will be fine. Because he knows that this is not going to work. So I just, as someone who lives in the United States, I find it baffling that he's trying the madman strategy when what people and countries need is reliability, consistency. But he's got a different logic, which has kind of led us here. Okay, so now before, United States consumers pays for Trump's tariffs. Yep, we all are, and we've been paying them for a while. So it's not going to get any easier for people living here. So now, before we move on to our last story, I'm actually going to introduce a little segment called the Stat of the Week. So the Stat of the Week, I'm just going to, it's just a simple stat. I want you guys to guess the stat, but the stat is going to be just a quick fire, and it's going to be relevant in our segments every day, or every week, I'm sorry. If you guys want me to do it every day, I can try to do it every day, but we'll start it once a week. So the stat that I'm going to introduce to you guys is 303 billion. So what do you guys think 303 billion represents? And I'm going to give you guys just a second to think about it. Put it in the comments. I'm looking right now. And we will, and I'll show you, and we'll move on to our next story. More water. Okay. Anyone got a guess for 303 billion, or over 303 billion? I was kind of thinking the United States population, but no, we're like way past that now. Okay. So I think that's enough time. So the answer is, 303 billion. What does that represent? That represents the proven crude oil reserves for Venezuela. So here is just here is where I'm showing you guys this article here of where I'm getting this statistic. So out of 1.73 trillion barrels of crude oil reserves, the top 4 countries account for more than half of these oil reserves. So it's one thing to sort of say, yeah, it's just oil reserves. It's what does that mean? But if we kind of understand the relationship the United States has had with a lot of these countries, I think we kind of see where I'm trying to go here. So Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia, it's had the petrodollar relationship with the United States. It's been things since FDR, and it's been one of the best decisions for the United States it has made in a while to basically allow security guarantees for Saudi Arabia so long as, they get access to Saudi oil. And then we have Iran. I don't need to go into the United States' relationship with Iran. We already know how it's the United States' relationship with Israel and Iran, and the United States strikes into Iran's nuclear facilities to, the Islamic Revolution and everything like that. We know their relationship. Canada, oddly enough, the United States' neighbor and the unsuccessful 51st state, as I like to call them. Trump tried so hard to make him the 51st state, and they said no, because I don't really think anyone wants to be, led by Trump no more than we are right now, which is sad enough itself. We have Iraq, which is number 5 on this list, and when we talk about the United States is still in Iraq with the global war on terror, the United States has long had its foot in Iraq, also influencing people like Saddam Hussein with Iraq's war with Iran. We have the UAE, which is a country that has a pretty good relationship with the United States. It's actually a great relationship, but the most recent bombing in, I believe it was Doha, if you guys can, maybe I'm wrong about that, but it was a bombing. Israel basically targeted Hamas officials. Oh no, it was in Qatar. I apologize. It was Qatar, not the UAE. But the UAE has a great relationship with the United States. Kuwait is a very small country, but I think if we remember the Persian Gulf War, Kuwait was an area that the United States was heavily invested in, and we could see here that they launched strikes in here for a reason. Russia, we already know Russia, guys, and Libya, it was, after Gaddafi, NATO launched strikes into Libya, and Libya has basically been in a civil war ever since. So what is this all to say? When we understand the relationship the United States has with these countries, now we can understand why, basically, what the United States' beef is with, no pun intended for Brazil, but what its beef is with Venezuela. The United States has long been trying to oust its president, Nicolas Maduro, from Venezuela. And this has been going on for a long time. There have been coups as far back as the George W. Bush administration, to Obama, to Trump, to Biden, to Trump again. They've long been trying to get access to Venezuela's crude oil reserves. And it's just, and it's baffling when we think about the ways they've been trying to do this with regime change operations and bombing, citing them for drug traffickers, putting a $50 million bounty on Nicolas Maduro. But this one may be the slimiest of them all. So most recently, if you guys are not aware, the Nobel Peace Prize was actually just awarded, and the winner for this year was Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria Machado. Now, I know that there are a lot of opinions about Maria Machado. I'm not gonna throw a blanket claim on everything she does. But what's pretty obvious is that, for one thing, she's a pawn of the United States, obviously. And if you don't believe me, the literal first thing that she does when she gets this award of a Nobel Peace Prize, mind you, is to thank President Trump that wanted this award too. But, she thanks President Trump, but also the people of Venezuela. This award is dedicated to you guys in this violent struggle. And so thank you, President Trump, so much for giving me a good recommendation to the Nobel Prize Board. And everyone can see this for what this is. It's just a very useful excuse of justifying ousting Maduro. Again, now it's here comes this peace leader. You know, look at what she's done. She deserves to lead the Venezuelan people. You know, throughout this. But if we actually understand what she's done and what she actually stands for, this award's absolutely nonsense. Not only did the Nobel Peace Prize award this, give this award to her, even though she has invited President Trump, the United States, constantly to invade Venezuela and oust Nicolas Maduro. Not only is she someone that has that has touted her relationship with Israel in this most recent letter to President Netanyahu, who right now are undergoing what they're calling a genocide in Gaza against the Palestinians. They did not just award this to her. They gave her this award when she was so happy about the effects of the god-awful economic sanctions that was imposed on Venezuelans that was responsible for killing over 40,000 people. This is who they gave this award to. Not someone who actually has done something about a peace process or actually, established peace and conflict. This is someone who has praised someone that is committing a genocide, someone who is bragged about the economic sanctions that, if you guys want to understand the scale of the sanctions, imagine the Great Depression, but multiplied by 30. And that was basically what happened to people in Venezuela after these sanctions were imposed. Look at this graph here. It's the inflation rate for Venezuela. And, the inflation rate is, before it's like ranging between 10 and 30%, doesn't look so bad. And then come to find out, it hits 254%, 63,000%. Do you know what that does to someone when you basically take all their money and throw it into a fire? These people couldn't afford food. They couldn't afford medicine. All of the things that people were relying upon, now they can't afford them because the sanctions that were imposed by the United States to oust oust a leader that opposes Maduro or opposes the United States because they want their oil. And this lady who won the Nobel Peace Prize is happy with the damage with this stuff, with all the pain that she's with the United States and the sanctions have caused. Not only were these sanctions illegal, unilateral economic sanctions have been illegal. The United Nations have declared them illegal for a long time now. But when you understand that this literally deprived anyone's ability to buy something for their survival, it's baffling that they would award this Peace Prize award to someone like Maria Machado. It would be insane, but if we actually understood the most recent winners, we see a pattern. One of the most recent leaders in 2021, her name is Maria Rosa, and she is from the Philippines. And here, a quick little biography goes into why they gave her the award, and it was she's endured constant political harassment and arrest by the Duterte government, which, for you guys' context, Duterte really ramped up improving relationships with Russia. So constant harassment from Duterte's government, and had to post bail constantly to set them free, right? She was someone that was a free, they would call her she won the prize for her efforts to safeguard freedom and expression, which is a precondition of democracy and lasting peace. She won this in 2021. Here is another winner from 2021. And he's from Belarus. His name is Dmitry Muratov. And, he was also a journalist in Soviet newspapers. Then after the disillusionment of the Soviet Union, he has been he was honored and he was awarded the prize for his courageous journalism in the face of authoritarian pressure and repression. So those are two examples. I could go into a lot more, but what does this show? This award has been nothing but a political tool for the United States and others that are aligned with them to either do regime change or basically shift the scales of influence in that specific country. And it's been quite evident. We have the leaders of these, the leader of Russia who had has massive material wealth similar to the oil reserves. This one with Venezuela. There are Nobel Peace Prize winners in Iran because of the protests in Iran and what that led to. So, in my opinion, this has been nothing more than just an absolute denigration of what the Nobel Prize actually means to people. Do you guys think the Nobel Peace Prize has been ruined? And do you guys think that maybe BRICS or someone similar should make an award that doesn't have this political bias? Because, this just goes to show even something as courageous as a Nobel Peace Prize is just used to to basically control the government of those you don't like. And it's just another soft political tool that the United States and others are using to oust Maduro. So we'll see how the United States attacks in Venezuela and how all of that will change, in the coming weeks, because we've seen more and more attacks. It looks like there's a war gearing up there, and they already have the justification, the claims to do so. He's a drug cartel leader. We have a Peace Prize winner now. Everything. So let me know what you guys think about how, if you guys think the Nobel Prize has basically ruined its own reputation, and if you think BRICS should adopt something similar. And I'll be sure to read through the comment section and everything after this program's over. And with that, we're going to conclude today's show. I really am so thrilled that I get to share this experience with you guys. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys did the same, and I hope that you guys took something away from this so much as I will when I go through the comments and go through any of your questions and what you guys thought about a lot of the most recent news. So what do you guys think about the stories we talked about today? And feel free to suggest any topics or anything that you want me to cover on the next program. And please be sure, and I'll be sure to look through the comments. But until next time, guys, I'm going to close the Epstein Files. But don't worry, they'll only be gone until next week. Thank you all so much for joining me.